program is produced using the resources of Public Media Network in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Learn more at publicmedianet.org.
Welcome to Connecting Communities, a podcast about Kalamazoo and the area and environmental issues and community activism. I am one of your hosts today, David Benak. With me today as our other host is Joe Byers.
Hello, welcome.
And today we have two guests with us from Concerned Pavilion Township community. They are primarily organized around the issue of a data center being proposed for Pavilion Township, and that today is Bill Farmer.
Greetings.
And Katelyn Clarey.
Hi.
All right. So I kind of started us off with what you're doing, but in your words, let's just start with how did this group come together?
Well, for me, it started, I was scrolling on Facebook of all things and saw an article from WWMT about a proposed data center, and I think it was about a week before the township meeting. And so that was the first thing I'd heard about it. I was already aware of data centers and the issues in different communities from More Perfect Union on YouTube. I follow some of their stuff, so I've seen where things have gone really bad in other communities. And so I said, hey, we need to go to that, to my husband. We go there with my father-in-law. There is where I first met Bill, and there he was collecting names and signatures, and so of people, residents that were concerned, and we started talking after the meeting, and one thing led to another, and we have an email list. We started the Facebook group, Concerned Pavilion Township Community, and that's kind of how all this got rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not too different of an experience. I found out about it from an AT&T service worker that was working on our line at the house. And that was the day before the meeting of September the 18th, which was the meeting of the Township Zoning Commission. And so I had heard about data centers and their effects on communities and what they're used for, and I was really concerned, so I went. And they almost closed down the meeting, and because of so many people showing up. And I had no idea all those people would show up, 50, 60 people. They almost closed the meeting down for fire marshal requirements. But they proceeded, and every single person that spoke against rezoning the property, which would allow a data center to be built. And they spoke with intelligence, and they spoke with emotion, like second and third generation farm owners. One person was there that spoke to that. One person spoke to they were looking for property in the township, and when they heard about this, they've changed their minds. Maybe we'll move out to Texas Corner and buy our forever home. And the full spectrum of issues were spoken to right then and there. And consumer energy was there, the property owner was there, and a representative from the city water supply was there, and 50 people who spoke against it. It was very, in my perspective, very reassuring. So that's how it got kicked off. And like Katelyn indicated, I just kicked into the organizer mode and started collecting names and to reach out and keep in touch, and that's what we've done. And in fact, the property owner came up to me outside and said, I want to be kept in the loop too. And he gave me his information, and from there, we moved forward. And Katelyn's mostly responsible, in fact, totally responsible for website and email. That expertise really helped. Our Facebook page went from about 7 people to over 600 now.
500. 500.
500.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But we do it together. I'm a little bit younger, so it's easier for me to navigate those types of things. So we'll be on the phone and have a game plan, then I'll execute, send out an email or created the page, and that's how things have been going.
There's a lot to unpack here, so I'm just trying to figure out how we can organize this so it's going to have our best impact. I think what I would like to see us do is talk about what is the issue first, and then talk about why you're opposed to it, and maybe from there what you're doing or what you want people to do. But we don't need to stick to that. But I think that might just give us kind of a way to deal with this complex topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, does that sound good, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just start with then the issue, not necessarily why we're opposed to it, but so you said data center.
Mm-hmm.
That you're talking to somebody who's never heard that there's such a thing planned for Pavilion Township, and explain it.
Maybe a good approach to explain what a data center does. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Do you want to go with that, or do you want me to go?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. I'll just start, and you move forward on it. It is a knowledge holding entity with chips that are the fundamental element of it. That when in operation, these chips take a lot of water to cool because they get real hot. And they form the best in cooling situation, and they take a lot of energy. Now, the information that they store is information that can be manipulated and added to by businesses. Businesses all over the world, all over the country, can buy into a data center and use its facility to store and manipulate information. For example, a business might provide information to a data center, and the data center would use that in artificial intelligence to point out efficiencies that they can implement that save them money, that make them more efficient, being able to do things quicker, and maybe point in the direction of sales or development that they otherwise wouldn't think about. That pretty much exhausts my knowledge of what they're utilized for.
Well, that and for regular people as well. If you get on and you Google, it now has that AI response at the top. And so when you do something as simple as, what is the zip code of this town? It sends out a request to these data centers, and the data centers, they run something on their end that then spurts out information. And that running something uses water to keep the data, the hardware of the data center cooled, as well as energy of actually running that itself. And so every little AI search that someone does, it may be a small amount of resources that it takes for that result, but you also have all of the training that goes in. And you don't know when these data centers move in. So for instance, this one in Pavilion Township, we don't know who would be there. We don't know if it would be Google. We don't know if it would be owned by a private equity firm. And so there's a lot of secretive around this. So maybe it's going to be used by a business. Maybe it would be used by Grok or all of these other AI functions. And so sometimes it's businesses using them to optimize things. Other times it's just when the average citizen wants to go online and make a video or find something funny, that's also going to these data centers as well.
It's looked upon almost like an invasion to a rural, small rural community of some hundreds of acres, unknown. We don't know who it is, what their capability is, how much energy they're going to use, and they're not going to share that. They're not sharing that with you. So it feels like this brute comes into the community. We want this. You're going to give it to us, and we're going to move forward. And these are investors that want to generate a lot of profit and earn back their investment plus whatever they can. So it's subject to the business bottom line, and that is profit regardless of impact. And there is huge impact and a lot of money. We're talking billions of dollars from the federal government, tax subsidies by states, investors with additional money to put in. It is huge, and it's nationwide. In Michigan, I've been told that there have been 300 permits pulled to build data centers just in Michigan, in 89 counties. Now, it might be a toss of the dice to see how many will be fruitful, but 300.
Yeah, the state really seems to be seeing this as a, way to generate some kind of economic benefit. I'm not sure where the economic benefit really comes from.
In their campaign coffers, because, it's these big tech billionaires, investors that are, funding these things, and they're also the people who are donating to their campaigns, and,
Oh,
Yeah. And so when they come to town, they tout benefits, and one of these benefits they tout are tax revenue. Well, in 2015, the state of Michigan passed a law exempting these data centers from having to pay sales and use tax. So they may still be paying the property tax on the land that they're at, just like anyone else who owns property does. They're not paying the sales tax on all of that equipment inside that has to get replaced, that has to go to either whatever landfill or recycling they have after that, and to rebuy it. And so originally, this exemption was supposed to last until December 31st, 2015. However, they passed an extension to it, and now that's going to go until December 31st, 2065.
2065,
Yes, 2065.
essentially permanent.
Yeah. I don't know why 2050 wasn't long enough personally, but apparently it wasn't, and they needed to go to 2065.
Okay.
And then to speak a little bit more on that, I jotted down a few things
go
because I like to.
ahead,
I
go
don't
ahead.
want to have false information, so I try to
this
make
is
sure everything
great.
is
Have
factual.
real information.
And so initially, creation creates a large number of temporary jobs. That's one of the other things that they promote is
Right.
job growth, tax revenue, job growth. And so in the 2015 law, creating the tax exemptions, MCL 20594CC, it required the creation of 400 jobs cumulatively by 2022 and 1,000 by 2026, stating that the exemptions would continue to apply after these dates only if these goals were met. However, even as the tax exemptions persist, there have been no state audit to verify the required job growth. So one of these data centers, some information was cited on techpolicy.press, and so Switch is one of them. In 2022, it reported that it had 26 jobs and that the median wage at the Switch data center was only $38,000 a year. And so with other sources we're seeing, the University of Michigan put out a study in July of this year, and they were stating that one of the promises is job growth, as we've been talking about. But what they're finding is a lot of the jobs are created are temporary, and also a lot of times they will then go and outsource jobs, so janitorial work. So they'll bring in a company where employees aren't unionized, give them an 11-month contract, and then end up going somewhere else as well. So we're told that there's all this job growth, and then when we go out and look at what we can find, it's not there. And this is one of the hurdles that we run into is a lot of people who are on the opposite side of the fence as us that are pro data center. They're telling us that our information is incorrect. We're just going online and finding whatever to validate our already held beliefs. However, there's so much secrecy around all this. If this information wasn't true, I'm not afraid to change my opinion. I've changed my opinion in life. As you grow, you get more information, and you either stagnate or you accept that things are different and you can change. However, in Indianapolis, there was a data center going in. I had someone I had gone to basic training with. He moved up to Indianapolis after a data center moved into his area in Arkansas, and then a data center was going in there, and they weren't revealing who it was. And after a leak came out, they realized that it was Google. And so it's really difficult for us when we're trying to collect information. We're being told, oh, no, that stuff isn't right. But there's so much secrecy around this information. Data centers aren't out there saying, this is how much electricity we used over this past year. This is how much water we've used. Actually, Business Insider requested records on how much water every data center is using, and they got a lot of redacted records. And in 2 cases, cities sued them to prevent the release of the information.
You know, just to continue on that line about jobs, that's one of their big pools, is we're creating jobs. It's economic opportunity. All this money is coming into the state. Well, we're seeing by actual measured experience that that isn't true. And what jobs are there are minimal, and the pay for those jobs are minimal. Then you look at the talking heads that represent this, the data center sector of the economy, and their goal is to eliminate tens of thousands of entry-level jobs all over the country for businesses and corporations. That's their goal. That's their business bottom line talking, and how this is going to be applied in eliminating jobs. That's the biggest savings that businesses can experience. No wages, no benefits, no people. Simple. Generates more profits. AI takes over that position, does most of it or all of it. Things are nice. So the overture or the propaganda that we're being given here, that it creates jobs, is in fact the opposite. It will create jobs in construction. And that's why a lot of the construction unions are in support of this. They have their own self-interests in regards to that. It gives them work. It's just unfortunate there isn't a long view and a more encompassing understanding of the detriment to society in building these things. So jobs, it's a hoax, and that's all it is. It's a good piece of publicity on a brochure or something on the internet that they can say, this is what we're accomplishing here. And in the long run, we're going to be suffering for it. And with a view of kids that are in high school or college graduates that are coming out that need those entry-level jobs, even mid-management jobs are on the chopping block, what's going to happen? I mean, as we are right now, I had 3 jobs my entire life that gave me a pension, it gave me health care for life, it gave me a decent life. Those days are over with modern technology and engineering and jobs being replaced by robots and now AI.
Well, someone that I graduated high school with, he got laid off. They were working up in Grand Rapids, and the company decided to lay off, I believe it was 400 workers in total, 200 up there. And so they were just one of the many that got laid off. And I think the other thing that people don't realize is, one, we have no way to realize how many entry-level jobs aren't, the vacancies as people move out of them, aren't being put out there for other people. But then 200 jobs, it may seem like in a bigger community that's something that the community could eat, but then all of those other people are now competing for the same amount of jobs minus 200. And so the amount of people looking for work, it increases, and so it makes the job market less competitive for everyone else.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, one of the things that I think this is playing into, kind of on the large scale, is the economy is rapidly returning to a late 70s look, where we have high inflation and low job creation. You know, the stagflation of the 1970s. And this is, we're seeing that again, and part of it is this issue. But I want to, so let's back up and kind of unpack that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to talk some more about the jobs issue. What are the types of jobs that AI, or well, we're not talking directly about AI, but data centers. Mm-hmm. What do the data centers promise to create? What kind of jobs? Where are these jobs? I don't see how a data center, other than its construction, has a place for many people.
Well, they need people for maintenance functions.
Right.
Chips wore out, things wore out.
Right.
So there's a maintenance function there, including cleaning up the place. facilities.
So you have 2-3 maintenance staff.
That's our point. That's our point. There aren't that many jobs. The jobs that I think are associated with job creation are people that might live in Africa someplace, or in Europe, or on the West Coast.
So
and they're working from home, or they're working for a corporation trying to make it more efficient, or to learn how many jobs AI can replace.
So the remote computing power provided by the data center does create some jobs that are primarily computer-based, but those could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're just using the computing power of that data center.
Exactly. Now, how many jobs? There's no measure. That's part of the problem that we're speaking to, not to justify their construction, but why is everything so secret? I mean, they'll move into an area like Pavilion Township, and the owner of the property will sign a non-disclosure agreement. What is that about? How do we learn from factual provision of information from whoever's going to develop it? Where is that information? So our information comes from national studies and actual experience that we're speaking to here. You know, okay, what are the jobs? Well, they're minimal and they're low paying. And I think that's the point. That is exactly the point, because that's the bottom line for business.
Okay. Katelyn, you said that you are told by pro data center folks that your numbers are cherry picked or that they're not reliable.
Yes.
Are you just being told that, or are you being presented with another set of facts that have more evidence behind them?
No, I'm just being told that. Where I'm being told that, oh, these are just stay-at-home moms, too much to do, spend too much time on the internet. And there isn't anything to back it up. And honestly, too, these people are few and far between. I'm not saying that they don't exist and they're not out there in numbers, but by far, most of the people that I have spoke to, the vast majority do not want a data center coming to their town.
Yeah, once they learn about them, yeah, nobody wants them in their community.
Funny parallel. You mentioned stay-at-home moms and being told that you don't have good evidence. Just struck me as a nice parallel to a woman named Lois Gibbs. Some listeners might recognize the name, but she's the woman who organized the community about Love Canal. She's the one that uncovered, one of the most egregious cases of industrial, hazardous waste being buried, and then a school and neighborhood being built on top of it. And she was told the same thing. Stay-at-home mom, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and was dismissed for a long time.
Well, another thing I wanted to speak to, if I have a moment, is you mentioned inflation going back to the 1970s. And so we are seeing inflation. You go to the grocery store, and the bill that I get is significantly more than it was a few years ago. And I look at the amount of food in my cart, and it's less. And one thing that is also rising is the cost of electricity. Electricity is going up much quicker than I hate to say the standard cost of inflation, because inflation's already going up quite a bit, but the cost of electricity is also going up at fast rates. And the thing is, where these data centers go in, people are seeing large rate hikes happening to their bills after these go in. There is one community, Bloomberg did a analysis of different information, and over a course of a 5-year period of time in an area where data centers went in, energy costs went up 265% for 1 month. And this is happening over and over again. And interestingly enough, I went back to find that WWMT article that I originally saw all this about. And here we go. And so it was on September 2nd was the coverage of the potential Pavilion data center. And the supervisor was quoted as saying, sorry, let me go back for a second. So Some of the concerns that community members in the area brought up were concerns about the electricity. So in speaking to that, the supervisor is quoted as saying, quote, "If anything, there might be some economies of scale that their bills may go down because of the larger wires and additional usage." And that is what I saw that got me started on this whole adventure that brings us here today. And that's, unfortunately, as much as I would love the cost of energy to go down, that again is not something that we're seeing when we look at community after community. According to PJM, so PJM is the world's largest power market, their independent monitor said that data centers were responsible for 63% of the last year's price increase.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In one of our meetings with the property owner concerning Pavilion Township, his partner indicated, the community won't necessarily experience increases in costs for their electrical bills. It's spread amongst all the people that belong to that particular power company, as if that sheds some light that should make it easier for people to accept the constructions of data centers. Everybody pays for it, and that is exactly our point. We are already paying for these things, and the projection in just a couple of years is that 12% of the national consumption of energy is going to be the data centers if they keep growing like they are right now. So what does that do to our system nationally? Our grid, in fact, they're keeping coal-fired generators open for this. They are keeping atomic energy places open.
That's one of the points I wanted to make. Yeah, if you look at the people who are the biggest supporters of the data centers, they're also the people who are the biggest supporters of nuclear power. Mm-hmm. For instance, the one over Palisades. Palisades is such a, I don't know how people aren't in jail over what's going on with the corruption about that. The same company being paid to decommission it as they're being paid to reopen it, same company at the same time. How, and one of the power plants with the worst safety records in the entire country, reactor that is so embrittled the Nuclear Regulatory Commission repeatedly shut them down, and they're reopening that, and that is to support data centers.
Yeah. There's even I read an article about there's a new mini nuclear reactor design that's out there someplace, and that they could be utilized for data centers.
And their track record in the field is terrible.
Well, that's what we're facing.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here.
Right.
We're being fed a lot of baloney, a lot of misinformation. We're being fed information that is accurate on a little micro. An example is it creates jobs, construction jobs, temporary. After that, it does not create jobs. In fact, AI is going to be utilized to eliminate jobs all over the country. So we just have to be vigilant, and we have to organize. And that's what we've been doing. We've been organizing. In fact, I just want to share with you that there is a statewide protest and rally going to be held in Lansing on the Capitol steps December the 16th.
And this will probably air the day after that.
And, that's what it is. It is what it is.
Well, then you don't have to wait to see how big it was. You can just open a new tab and do a quick little search.
You can go back and look at the coverage of this.
Yeah. So there are people organizing all over the state, people like us, township people. They're flooding township meetings. They're canceling township meetings because too many people are showing up to handle it. This is disrupting people's lives. and causing a lot of concerns. Environmental, we haven't detailed too much, but some of these data centers, the hyper data centers, can use 5 million gallons of fresh water every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And even if they're tapped into a municipal water system, and by the way, this particular one in Pavilion Township will be connected to Kalamazoo City wastewater and freshwater treatments. And they assure us that the replenishing of that aquifer is so much beyond what will be used, but that might be true. But
It could
what
be
are
why the city's been exploring for new well fields.
Okay.
For real.
That's good information.
They were just doing surveys that they, I'm on the Environmental Concerns Committee, and we just had can't remember her title, but the woman who takes care of well fields, and they just did a survey where they had one of these, the same thing they use for looking for minerals to mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's this gigantic square thing that they tow behind an airplane and fly really low back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
And the reason they were doing that is to look for new well fields for the city. Because Kalamazoo is the largest city in the state of Michigan that is groundwater fed.
Okay.
Yep.
See, we're being exposed to new information all the time that impacts on the development of data centers. This is important information, I appreciate it, but it just shows you this delicate balance that we live on and with, our planet. And the plans to extract all this wealth from it at our detriment has to be stopped. It has to be stopped. This ripples through our educational system. It ripples through the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, young people and how they're being educated now. It just, it permeates our society. We just have to take a really close look at this. I wrote a brief article that the only way that I could agree, and this was a good exploration because you brought this up in one of our meetings, what would be the conditions where we could agree to this? And I wrote an article that said that these data centers have to be truly publicly owned, number one, and controlled by public and strict legal regulations and how they're applied. The profits have to be poured back into the community, or the state, or the country collectively to provide something more to satisfy a social need that's more pressing, like better education, health care for all, clean water, clean air, instead of continue to poison it with the building of data centers. That's what they do. They are a poison. And with 60,000 new chemicals created every year in this country and are utilized in our air and in water systems and impacting us, it has to stop somewhere. It's chaos. It's chaos, and there are no regulations to this. So it has to be done. After I wrote that, I said, in spite of writing this, I don't think we should have any data centers built unless they're under strict control, help with solving medical problems, help solve some social issues. How do we provide health care for everybody? How do we provide education for every single person so they can actualize their potential instead of pay as you go? So I'm looking at it as a systemic problem. It just adds up too much. The carbon footprint of these entities go way beyond any benefit they bring to any community or to a society. In fact, the people that will benefit from this are the 1%. Mm-hmm. They already own media, TV, they own our educational system now, they own our healthcare system, and none of it is good. It's counterproductive to life and its fulfillment.
When you talk about community, I think one thing too that is easily overlooked is this may be Pavilion Township. However, now the water is also coming from the city of Kalamazoo. And so not only does this involve the city of Kalamazoo and any other municipality that is on that water system, but also we don't know how this data center is going to be used. We don't know if it could be used to streamline functions in other industries where other people could be losing their jobs. Another issue too is Elon Musk went down to Memphis, Tennessee, and was building a data center for Grok. And there, they weren't supposed to be using any of these power generating, whatever you call them. It's more than a generator. And so the community they started having asthma issues and things like that. And so someone sent up a drone and could see all of these lined up. And then they said that they weren't using them. And then they came out and said they were only using a few of them. And then they sent up a heat-seeking drone and could see how many are online. And so they're basically just put a whole power plant right next to the city of Memphis, causing all these issues. And this is one air that we all breathe. And one of my other big concerns, this segues into, is what regulations do we have? If you look at what they proposed with this data center, it looks really nice. There's going to be these beautiful berms around the outside. Generators are only allowed to run however many hours a week to test it. But my question is, who's going to make sure of that? Who is qualified to be an inspector in this community? What penalties are there if they don't follow through? What procedures do we have for randomized inspections? Because if someone knows an inspection's coming, you dot your I's, you cross your T's. So to me, having this beautiful berm around the outside, trust me, I drive down the street and I'm like, why do we have to have so much grass? We could have a bush there or a tree. I love that idea, but to me, when I hear it without knowing who's going to ensure that these rules are followed, it seems like a beautiful privacy fence, so we don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, well, and the DEQ gives advance notice before they do any inspections in Michigan. I don't know if that's the same in other states, but that's the case in Michigan. So I'm thinking about ripple effects. You mentioned that, and we're talking. One thing you mentioned, the bigger wires. So that we all know there's going to be a tremendous amount of energy use, right? Mm-hmm. And the infrastructure is not built to handle that.
Oh, I have the solution to that. Do you mind if I share something?
Yeah, my question, where I'm going with this
Yes.
is, do we have any idea how that power is going to get to this facility? And is it crossing, or how many people's property is it crossing? How much property is it going to take? So I'm going to think about what's the infrastructure going to, because it's not just going to be the data center. It's going to be everything that feeds it.
Well, there's a lot to jump off on this. And one thing I saw today that just really jumped out to me. So I had this quoted here from More Perfect Union. So this is from one of their videos. And they said, "The utility business model is more than 100 years old, and it was designed to spread electricity service at the beginning of the 20th century. The basic idea is that utility builds something, and you socialize the cost of it to all the ratepayers that have no choice but to take that utility service. The cost of new infrastructure mostly shows up on another part of your electricity bill, sometimes called delivery charges. Utility companies are allowed to set those charges high enough to recoup every dollar they spent building, plus a regulated rate of profit, usually around 10%. So whenever you need bigger wires, and they have to build these bigger wires, not only, as we were talking about earlier, that cost can get passed on to everyone else, well, they can also make a profit on that, which to me makes me wonder, why, at the first meeting that I went to, one of the things that was brought up is that consumers has enough electricity to be supporting this. However, can you help me with the word, when rates are higher at certain times than others?
The rationing
Flex
process.
pricing.
Yeah.
They already have that. And so one resident got up and spoke, and she says, it costs me more to run my washing machine when I get home from work at this time to this time. And so we're being told that they have all this energy that they can supply to it, and yet residents are already having to pay more to do their laundry when they get home from work versus at another time of the day.
Yeah, the pressures are already there.
And yeah, even if But on top of that, even if they have enough generating capacity, they do not have the infrastructure to deliver that to this facility.
They partially address that because the general location of the property is very near Sprinkle.
Okay.
And there are, the nature of the power lines there, they indicate would accommodate a simple extension to this farmland that they want to turn into a data center.
And
That's what they're claiming.
Okay.
And an additional bonus, just shortly away in Comstock is where they are trying to get a 400 megawatt hour BESS center, battery energy storage system. And so data centers have to be online all the time, which is why they have generators. And so it's going to be really nice if they get this massive BESS center right near this data center.
Yeah, which I'm not in support of either. They were interviewing, there was a TV interview of a fire chief, I think in California. I'm not too sure where it was, but they were talking about a fire that happened, and they were discussing, well, the fire department would put it out. And the fire chief said, wait a minute, I have to explain, our policy is not to put them out, but to let them burn. And the toxicity of those, I think there is a farm nearby that can't grow their crops anymore because the land is polluted. It won't allow that.
Yeah, modern batteries are chemical marvels, but they're using elements that we haven't played with before, and a lot of these are they call them rare earth minerals, but they're heavy metals. They're very, very heavy metals, and they're highly toxic.
Yeah, and to just follow the carbon footprint of what you just said. And that's an industry that's going to grow with the spread of data centers.
Well, again, so ripple effects. You know, there's a lot of people who are upset about the giant copper mine that was just permitted in the Porcupines up north. One of the podcasts that I listen to is about the Lake Superior region, and they were just talking to somebody who was, this is where I was thinking about the surveys. They're surveying for minerals, particularly these lesser common, high value, particularly he was talking particularly about graphite. But they're trying to create a new mining boom in the Upper Peninsula to feed the batteries and data centers.
Yeah, it's it feeds upon itself. One feeds the other. It's an industry that these investment entities could get into and make a big killing while they're killing, while they're killing the planet. So there's a lot of fun to have out there. And, the bottom line is we're organizing. Yeah. And without organizing, we fall victim. And we're not victims here.
So let me see if I can. We've got some time yet, but we're getting there.
Good
so
luck,
I want to
buddy.
see.
I want to hear this.
So we've got issues: water use, energy use, secrecy. Another one we haven't really mentioned. You mentioned a couple times farmland. How much land are we talking about, and what is that land being changed from?
Well, one of the reasons why the Midwest is such a boom at the moment is for a few reasons. One, we have cooler winters, so when it's cooler outside, it's easier to cool inside the building. Another reason is how much fresh water we have. We have an abundance of fresh water. You go to Arizona, and that's not the case. Another reason is we have so much farmland, you don't have to clear as many areas. You may still have to prep the land in some ways, but it takes out a lot of that work that they have to do if you buy undeveloped land to put it somewhere.
And this is farmland, and was farmland with a small forested area on it. But originally is farmland.
And I don't remember how many acres that one is, but another concern is we see where one data center pops up. Right now it's happening in Indiana. They had this massive data center come up, and now they're doing another one right by. And so as much as we're told this may be the size of this one, and they want this to be a hyper data center, which is different than other types of data centers. And so from what I've been told is when you have one data center, they like to have other ones nearby so they can communicate back and forth easier. And so to me, even if it's on whatever parcel of land, these companies have so much money. What's to stop them from going to a farm a little ways down the road and saying, hey, I'm going to offer you 10 times your land value so that I can buy it and then put this data center there. And so it feels like no matter what we're looking at, it almost feels like it breaks the dam, so to speak. I think that'd be a good phrase. It breaks the dam that whatever amount of land they use right here, there's no promise that this is where it stops,
In fact, the property owner owns additional acreage across the street
which would be in Comstock Township.
in Comstock. And it's several hundred acres on the site in Pavilion Township.
And you've already mentioned that the battery facility, so it's already metastasizing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what it is. And in my opinion, there's not much reason to take good farmland and turn it into data centers. I think food is probably more
Absolutely.
critical. And probably employs more people per acre if you looked at what they were doing. Yeah. So we've got energy, water, secrecy,
Carbon
Jobs.
footprint.
jobs, carbon footprint. Are there any other primary
Yeah, there is.
issues?
I mean, we've been experiencing the growing concentration of wealth in this country since the 70s. And you alluded to that, it's reminiscent of the 70s. Well, the context of the 70s, one context is a foreshadowing of what I believe we're entering into with AI, is that from that point to the 90s to the 2000s, there were 20 million mass layoffs in this country. And that's what produced the Rust Belt. That's what produced all the auto manufacturing to be just on the other side of the border of the United States and Mexico, and going on to Korea or Japan or to China. And when you say 20 million mass layoffs, the context of that is the destruction of community. It's the closing of schools, public school systems, of businesses that feed a community. A kid that's going to college in those communities can no longer go to that college. The hospitals close. So this is serious business, and it's socially disruptive. And I think we're on the edge of another 1970s, 1980s consequence of the growing accumulation of capital and its strategic use. And when I say that, what I mean is these billions of dollars that are being poured into data centers are a function of wealth, of profit, that go into controlling our electoral process. And they're able, through that money, to elect people that represent not our interests, but their interests. And I think that's why there are no controls on these right now. That people are opening their states for this as a money-grubbing thing for economic development is what it is. And we're falsely living in an era of scarcity where our municipalities need this money to grow, when the profits of private corporations are beyond historical belief right now. So it's a misdirection. And that's why originally I wrote an article saying they should be publicly owned, because that's the only way those profits aren't going to be held privately, but we socialize those profits to provide social needs for people.
We also have the issue that what are they going to be used for? Are they going to be able to keep a record of anyone who looks up whatever search makes the government unhappy at the moment? There's a lot of concerns with facial monitoring and all these cameras that it's going to be a lot easier using AI to track what people are doing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I've heard from podcasts that I listen to, like these data centers are like the prequel to social credit scores and digital currency and all that bad stuff. Like you mentioned, the facial recognition and all that stuff that goes along with
Plus,
the surveillance state.
yep, exactly.
Well, and another one is military, too, because it was just this week that the Secretary of War came out and he is promoting AI. There is now an AI military version that they put on all the military's computer and civilians that work for the military. And that's not even to say the AI that they want to integrate into weapons. And I mean, I hate to
They call it Skynet.
Not
And
yet, but-
I mean, I hate to be a person that says, like, at least Raytheon is creating jobs for people. But I mean, when you look at what AI, trying to imagine what that could do using it in a military setting, I mean, there are just so many rabbit holes that can be gone down that there could be a podcast all in of itself for some of these different issues. And we don't know what this data center is going to be used for.
Right.
Yeah, and that is a very sadly fun conversation. It's unfortunate, but it would be very interesting. But what I want to take us to, what can people do? So we've got the rally in Lansing that probably happened yesterday when you're listening to this, or very recently. So this is gonna come out in a couple weeks or thereabouts. What can people at that point do to help concerned Pavilion Township community or draw awareness to data centers in their communities?
The property, bottom line, start attending your township board meetings and your township zoning commission meetings.
And if there's a
That's where-
planning commission as well, if there's one.
In the planning committee, they call them different things.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah.
like, I think Pavilion, their township zoning is a planning commission. I'm not sure, but you're right. Get involved in your local township, bottom line, because that's where the decisions are to recategorize plots of land from agricultural to light manufacturing or industrial or uses for AI. And have those discussions right now.
And I just want to echo that because this is one of the best pieces of advice that you can get for taking action to protect your community from influences that don't have your community's best interest at heart. Is go to not the city commission meeting or the township commission. Yes, go to those as well, but the decisions start at there's like a feeder, a tributary system. There's a zoning commission, a planning commission, a road commission. Those kinds of commissions often make the decisions, and then it gets to the township board or the city commission, and that decision is essentially made at that point. If you can stop or influence in a good way a project at those early stages, it's much easier, because once it gets to that final where it really gets public, it's too late. It's almost impossible. And those local planning commission, zoning commission, road commission, those types of things, their meetings are public and they're available on websites and in a local newspaper, but they're not really advertised. So these issues happen before people get aware of them. So great point. Take advantage of those advisory and those planning commissions. That's a great way to influence something positively before it's too late.
Yeah, in fact, be appointed to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, protect your community by your activity. Get appointed on these commissions.
And those commissions are generally appointed rather than elected. You generally just have to apply, and they often have empty seats. I'm chair of the Kalamazoo Environmental Concerns Committee, and we currently have, I think, 3 empty seats. And that committee is not unusual. There's lots of seats to get involved with that way.
Well, I think this is the perfect place, too, to throw in what I think is the silver lining of the matter. Right now, we are so polarized. People, the left and the right, are fighting each other on so many issues. It feels like a tug of war. And surprisingly, with this issue, I have seen so many people come together. Because when something like this is coming to your neighborhood, it doesn't matter if you're out there sporting red or blue or something in between. People don't want this, and we're being reminded that neighbors are neighbors, and we have to look out for each other. And so talk to each other, come back together, because if we keep fighting ourselves, it's easier to have us chasing our tail as regular citizens. If we can all come together, we can take back our power. And I think that's something I've seen a lot, unfortunately, is a lot of people feel like they don't have the power. But at the end of the day, this country was supposed to be a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so I'm a believer that we need to use this as an opportunity to remember who our neighbors are. And we may disagree on issues, but the first step is to talk. And this is an issue that's really getting people to start talking to their neighbors again and realizing that we care about the same things. We don't want to walk outside and hear a giant data center humming away that's going to be taking away jobs. It reminds us of our humanity and how much we have in common with each other. And so the biggest step is to attend those meetings, but also unite with your fellow community members, come together and do something. That's how I got so involved. I didn't plan to do all this. I just felt like I had to do something. So I talked to Bill. And then from there, that do something was we need an email sent out. His internet wasn't working, so I do that. If every person just does something, makes one phone call, makes one connection, joins one group, shows your solidarity somewhere, eventually that picks up momentum. I never would have expected to be doing all this here today, but it all just starts with do something.
Yeah, good point.
And for the moment, you've stopped the data center, right?
It's paused. We are very much holding the narrative that it is a pause, it's not over. And so it is movement in the right direction. Things have slowed down. They say they want to speak to community members, but at the end of the day, even if they walk away, who's to stop another data center buying a property of land somewhere else nearby? And so even if this battle is won, the war is not over, and we have to keep the pressure going and look out for each other. And so right now, it is a pause, but that's what it is a pause. They didn't say that they're done. They have paused until after the new year, and so we'll see what happens after that.
And just one of the things I'm thinking about here, just to throw this in, so this isn't a NIMBY issue. This isn't an issue of, if you haven't heard the acronym, NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's a criticism often leveled against, say, environmental groups because they say, oh, we don't want that polluting plant here, but they don't pay attention when it's someplace else. I hope people listening to this recognize that you're right, we don't want this in Pavilion Township, but we also recognize it's not good for any community.
Exactly.
It doesn't belong here, but it doesn't belong anywhere else either. It's not to say that there's not some way that a data center facility thing could work, but with the technology that exists, in the regulatory environment that exists, in the financial environment that exists, we can't have them.
It's not happening in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole lot
Right.
there. That would show responsibility in caring and protecting the earth and being compassionate in a human being. It's not here. I think we represent that. We represent compassion. We represent understanding. We want to protect this earth and to protect our neighbors. And you don't do that by allowing a poison in your community or any other community.
Okay, final thoughts?
I thought that was pretty good, but you got something more profound. Let's hear it.
Or just where you we can find you, folks listening can find you?
I think the best thing that people can do is actually, our Facebook page has a lot of resources in it and a connection to the statewide effort here.
And other groups too. Other
Yeah.
groups have reached out on our group and have invited us to theirs. They've reached out in solidarity. Howell is dealing with it, and a couple of the other communities with Best too.
Celine is
Yeah.
deep into it. Livingston, it is all over the state now. In the Upper Peninsula, it's going on. Kalkaska just was successful in shutting something down there. Yeah, I'd say organize. Go to our Facebook page, Concerned Pavilion Township Community, and from there, the connections will be made statewide. There's a lot of wealthy, organized power that's pushing these things, and we have to push back.
So this is a great example of what solidarity in a community looks like and can accomplish. But I just want to finish with Katelyn. How has this work so far made you feel?
So I think it was kind of twofold. At first, as I started diving deeper and deeper, it was very easy to get depressed, to see how many communities got steamrolled, how many people have been personally hurt. However, as time has gone on, I've really been able to see people come together from the left and from the right, and that's been very heartening because I've been in a lot of different communities, some very red and some very blue, and I agree with some more than others, but at the end of the day, I can see people's hearts on both sides, and it frustrates me how much we fight each other in this country. And so to see people finally coming together over something, I wish this wasn't a case, but I'm a believer that things aren't going to get better until things get worse because people are afraid things could always be worse. And so as data centers come knocking on citizens' doors, they realize it's here and we need to come together. And it doesn't matter if the person next to me voted blue straight down the ticket or red straight down the ticket. At the end of the day, we're here for each other and we're going to look out for each other. So I really hope it can be kind of a realigning of our North, that we realize we're community members, we're neighbors, we need each other to survive and to get away from the partisanship and to get back to the heart of just people looking out for people and doing what's best for everyone. So it's kind of been a pendulum swing from one extreme to the other, and so I hope I stay on this side of it. We'll see as things continue, but it's more fun to be optimistic than it is to be pessimistic, so I'm going to try to hold on to that and try to help bring communities together because that's all I can do. I got to do something. That's how I got all involved with this, is do something. So I'm just going to keep doing that something and see where things go.
All right.
Thank you.